time. What's new and how Teamon drivers...
What is his name, Bill?
14.
Oh, yeah, 14.
Sit up.
Okay, we're ready to go. We got still red lights on. I mean, go down it. Hey, Jeffrey, we received your tape. Really surprised. I wasn't expecting that. But I tell you, really have enjoyed it. And I think it's real wonderful of you to do that, boy. Really. So, we watched it pretty close, haven't we, Judy?
Oh, yeah.
Too. Yeah, we enjoyed every bit of it. But we noticed that a few little things that I might could fill you in on a little bit there, maybe Trenton did. Trenton did a great job, don't get me wrong, he did a good job, but he is like myself, you know, we were in and out there, and a lot of things happened, you know, and some of them wasn't around there. And so the purpose of this little bit of tape here, Judy and I are going to fix for you, we hope, and send it to you. Maybe we'll fill in a few little things about the family, and maybe that Trenton didn't say much about. What he gave an overall picture on was great, though, especially the trip through the park there. It was great. I really enjoyed it. That's what I've been wanting somebody to do, is go in there and take some footage for me, because you know, I left, this year will be 51 years ago. I left Kentucky and haven't seen much of Kentucky since. And I still got the memory of our place in my mind like it was when I left. I can still see it, just like a picture on the wall. And I noticed the first part, if you promise to do better next time, okay. Anyhow, there was a rock leaning up against a tree that the little lady was wiping off, and I think I could make out she was saying James or something on it. Let me tell you a little story right quick about that. Right after James died, and my mother, your daddy's mother, had me to go in the woods and find a rock, a stone, like that, and had me to sit out there in front of the house with a little hammer and a chisel and try to carve James's name and so forth, and fix it to a little identification tombstone to put it to James's grave. And that was, I'm satisfied that's the same rock. And as you know, James died in 1935 in February. And so that stone was carved, I turned that out in 1935. Now you figure up how many years that is if you want to. And I've often wondered, I told my daughters and my wife about doing that. And as far as I know, nobody in the family knows anything about that stone now. And I've wondered what happened to it. And I've wondered if I was ever get back there, I would like to look for it, just to see it, because I haven't forgot it. And so I'm satisfied that is my stone. And let me go ahead and tell about the wheelbarrow wheel.
If you want to.
And in the park where you found that wheelbarrow wheel, now Trenton wasn't there. He had moved on. I believe he was, I don't know whether he was in service or working in Louisville, but he wasn't at home. I wanted me a bunch of chickens, and I had that wheelbarrow wheel that used to guide, and I made me a wheelbarrow, just a long, flat bed on it with a thing up front so the stuff wouldn't fall off, you know, on two handles. And I went over to some of those houses and barns where they had moved and left some lumber and stuff around, and I got me up a bunch of lumber and some tin roofing, and I hauled that back. Sometimes I'd have to go a few miles to get the stuff, and I haul it and walk and push that wheelbarrow on and that wheel that you got there. And there'd be a little bit of interruption right here. I think Ruby's going to pass in front of me here. She's got it. I was hoping she'd hesitate there and show me that I am a special person or something on her blouse. I didn't get it. Anyhow, I got that wheelbarrow fixed like that, and I hauled material to build my chicken house, and I went down back behind the house. What Trenton told you, he said this was a wooded area. I cut some poles for framing, and I built me a nice chicken house. It was about 12 by 12. I put nesters in it and roost posts for my chickens, and I went over the countryside and asked for jobs, asked for work at the farmers, and they say, well, back during the Depression, they said, well, we got work, boy, but we don't have no money. I said, you got some chickens, I'll work all day for that chicken or those 2 chickens, and that's the way I gathered up my chickens and filled up that chicken house. Anyhow, I used that wheelbarrow for a lot of things I made, and I'm satisfied that's the same wheel that I used back then, and that's been a long time ago. So that'll be about enough for that. And is there anything else I was going to fill him in on for?
No, I don't think you're not right now.
I guess, anyhow, I want to compliment you and Trenton. You did a great job, I tell you. And I was surprised you got Trenton to sit down and stay still long enough to do that. You must have a lot of influence on that boy. And I call him boy. He's kind of an old boy, but he's a boy.
He's 2 years older than you.
He thinks he's an old man, and I'm a young kid, and he's only 2 years older than me.
Okay, that's
Okay, now we'll get back. Judy wants to ask me some questions, and
Fill in some places for
the oldest daughter, Judy. She's sitting right over here. Hey, Judy.
Hi.
You got something you want to ask me?
Yeah, I thought we kind of fill in some places. I think Jeff and his family would be interested in. And so let's kind of go back, okay?
Okay, I'll go back.
Let's start, what is your earliest memory of with Grandpa and Grandmother? Where were y'all living, you know, starting with you, far back as you can remember?
Well, I don't rightfully know if I can tell exactly where, but I do. My memory goes back quite a bit. I remember way before we moved to Mammoth Cave, but I can remember things that happened, but to identify the exact places is kind of hard for me to do because I don't know them by name like the older brothers do. But I remember back years ago when I was quite small, I would go visit my grandmother who lived somewhere there at I believe it's what they call Slash Ain't Door, which was Isaac's wife, which is my daddy. It was my daddy's daddy, my daddy's mother, and she would cook cornbread in an old Dutch oven or something on the hearth in front of the fireplace, and cut me off a great big old slice and put butter in it, and I'd sit there and eat it, and after I got through eating, I'd go back home. And I remember that, but I don't remember exactly where they lived at the time, but I remember Grandma and the cornbread. And I also remember that Dad used to do a lot of gambling. You know, Trenton said he bootlegged a little bit. Well, he also was a gambler, too. Trenton didn't mention that, but he did. He did a lot of gambling. I know one time that he won a guy's horse and buggy, and I heard somebody won a store or something or something, or merchandise in the store or something too. But anyhow, the horse and buggy bit was kind of cute. He'd taken the guy home, let the guy out. He was good about it, and he'd come home with a horse and buggy. And I know I used to sleep in there where the fireplace were, and he'd come in late at night. And
Which place was this?
I don't know. That's what I said. I don't know, but I just remember him doing this. And he would have money in his pockets where he'd won, and dollar bills would be wadded up in little balls. You know, I guess he'd just, so he could put them in his pocket and wouldn't bulge out or something. Anyway, when he'd come home, he'd sit there with the fireplace and straighten out that money and, straighten it out and lay it, stack it, put it together. And I'd get up and sit up with him a whole lot of times, He would do that, and I remember when the revenue men come after him, they had I think it's back then. It was 3 carloads of them
Well,
coming.
when was this?
Yeah, I just remember I was a little fellow. I don't remember what year. It before we moved to Mammoth Cave.
Okay, that's
And anyhow, before we moved to Mammoth
okay.
Cave. And they got him and taking him on down to the road. They had to park the cars. And I remember it was a good little distance from the house. Now Trenton probably can fill you in on this, just where it was. But I can tell you what happened. They taken him on down there to the car, and all those revenue men, they got to piling in the cars, and Dad, you know, he said, wait a minute, says, all y'all getting in the cars, says, what about me, what am I going to ride? And one of them says, don't worry, Mr. Jim, says, we're going to make a place for you. So they did, they carted him off, and I know later on, I visited him in jail, and stayed with him a good little while, and I don't think they kept him too long. Anyhow, it wasn't too long, but while he was in jail, I remember that was a period there that we had a dog that went mad that bit everybody except me. I was the only one the dog didn't bite, and out of the whole family, and the dog would have got me if I hadn't run to the garden and climb up on the garden gate where the dog couldn't get to, and I was kicking at the dog time, and Clark come out and was going to jump on me because I was kicking at the dog, but I kicked at the dog anyhow. I kept the dog off of it. Anyhow, that dog had rabies, and everybody had to go take shots. That's why Dad was away. And at that, I remember there was the same place there. Trenton, again, can tell you what place this is. I don't remember the places, what they call them. But this place, I used to go out with the bigger ones and watch some bigger boys and watch them plant corn and stuff. And I thought that was something great. And I wanted to do something good. And one time, they had the seed corn at the end of the field, and I thought, well, I just had me a big old patch of corn, you know, and I just got it and scratched me out a hole, and I just buried all that seed corn in one place. Then later on, Dad used to shave with a straight razor. He had an old razor strap, he'd sharpen that thing on. And so I thought it'd be nice if I could do something for my dad. So I got his straight razor and went outside. The only place I could find where there wasn't no grass was up under the house. So I crawled up under the house, and I taken that razor and I dug me out a cute little hole. Stuck that razor down in there and buried it. Well, I forgot about it. Maybe a week or two later, you know, Dad decided to shave and got looking for his razor and couldn't find it. And he's asking around. I said, I know where it is. And he said, where's it at, son? I said, I planted it. He said, what do you mean you planted my razor? I said, I planted it. He said, what for? I said, so I could raise you some little ones. He said, where did you plant it? I said, up under the house. He said, will you show me where you planted it? I said, yes. So I crawled up under the house and dug it up and gave it to him. And he held it up and looked at it, and it wasn't in no condition to shave with, I'll tell you that. There were gaps all in it, but I thought he was going to tear my britches off of me, but he didn't. He just looked at me and went on. I guess he thought my intentions were good. I was going to raise him some little razors. That was down in just before I think we moved to Mammoth Cave.
Well, you were 7 when y'all moved, weren't you?
I think Trenton says I was 6, and I say I was 7.
Well, in 29, you said y'all moved there in 29.
We moved there either in 29 or 30, yes. I was born in 1922.
Yeah.
So, well, 22 and 20, that'd be 7 years.
Yeah.
I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what shape was the house in when y'all moved in it? Were y'all renting it, or how did you get the house?
At first, I think Dad made a few payments of rent on the house. And it seemed to me like later, this was really involved. This fellow, the old fellow up there that he was making a payment to, he said something to Dad about paying taxes on it or something. Well, I understood, and after Dad paid taxes on it so many years, he could put a claim on the house some way.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he ended up with it some way there, and we stayed there. Now, like I was 7 years old when we moved there, and I left when I was 18, so I spent 11 years there. And during that 11 years, I thought it was a long time, but since I've got to be as old as I am now and been away as long as I have, I look back and see it was a very short while. And that's just...
Well, how many rooms was the house?
When we first moved in that house, I recall Trenton said it was an L-shaped house. Well, it was an L-shape, but it had a kitchen on one end of the front part, then it had a hallway, and then it had another room, and it had a double fireplace, one chimney with a fireplace on each side. It had on the back side what we called the old room. It was a good big room. It run back straight from what we called, Trenton called the living room. And it had a small room at the side of the chimney, the side next to the railroad track. It had a small room there like a big walk-in closet. Then this room extended way back towards the well, and at the very back it had a room built out, and it had best I remember, it had a porch that run up to what I said was a hall. I said it had a kitchen and a hall. It had a porch that run up to the hall, and it had a door there at that porch. Now that's how many rooms it had. Later on, the bigger boys and Dad, cut about half of the old room off and closed it in and made the room smaller. And because it leaked or something. It didn't have a tin roof on it. I think it had board roof or something. I don't know, some reason. They made that room shorter. We had a smaller room back there because they kind of like bobtailed it. And I know later on, when I was just a little fella, they tore that one room off. In fact, we had chickens in that one room one time. I don't know whether Trent remembers this or not, but I know we used to look out the window early in the morning and watch the chickens fly out of that room. And it was bothered with mites, so I don't remember ever having mites because kept it clean. Then eventually that room was taken off. It was taken off when they bobtailed that back room. And then we just had nothing back at the back door where the hall was, and one day I found me some old lumberware somewhere, and I put me up some 2x4s like a V like this, and run at a 45-degree angle going this way, and made some little floor joists and put a floor out there so he could come out of the room, the bobtail room out on that porch. He'd come out of the hall on that porch and make one set of steps coming down. And I did that.
Well, how much land did y'all have?
Well, at that time, we only had about, I think it was about 3 acres, but I can guarantee you that it increased over the years, and I can tell you about that.
Ellie would be interested in how y'all increased the land.
How we increased the land. Well, Trenton mentioned about Dad staying on in the park, and about how he would run the park rangers' way when they had bothered. He forgot to tell you that I was his sidekick at this particular time. All the other boys were gone, and I was with Dad up till I was 18 years old. But the 3 acres we had was surrounded by good timber. Trenton called the locust out there locust thicket, but I remember it as the locust orchard. They were plenty there. I believe, best I remember, is about 20 acres put out there by the L&N Railroad Company, black locusts. And behind us, L&N Railroad Company owned a big tract of timber, and big huge trees, poplars, oaks, cedar trees, and all that kind of stuff. Big, beautiful trees. And all the other boys were gone. Dad and I, we were working on farms every chance we get, working and getting money and doing this, and a lot of scheming and so forth and so on, and you know, to get money for the groceries. Because I was working every chance I got, and giving Dad all the money I could for groceries for the kids and young ones. So we had pretty tough trying to get money. I know one time.
Well, we finished talking about y'all fix the land first.
How we fix the land first?
Yeah.
Okay, anyhow, Dad would say, son, get your axe. We're going to go run a new line around this place. And okay, so I'd get the axe and we'd go out there to the side of the place and he'd say, you see that big poplar tree down yonder? I said, yeah. He'd say, go down and mark that tree. That's a corner. I said, okay. I'd go down and mark that. So he'd come down and he'd rub his chin. He'd look. See that big red oak over yonder? I said, yes, sir. He said, that's the other corner. Go mark that. All right, I go mark it. And he'd get down there and he'd be rubbing his chin. He'd look and he'd say, you see that cedar tree up yonder? I said, yeah. He said, that's the other corner. Go mark that. By the time we'd be around, you know, and we'd have about 50, 60 feet taking in all around that. So we'd get our saws, we'd go in there and we'd start cutting logs. If it's a stray locust, a cedar tree, we'd cut postes. I've seen times we'd have 2 or 3 log trucks in there hauling out logs to the sawmill. Sometimes a park ranger would come. And he'd come around and look, you know, and, hey, Mr. Jim. He said, howdy, howdy. How you getting on, Mr. Jim? Fine, fine. Yeah, okay. He'd leave. That'd be it. He'd just shake his head and leave. But we did that several times. I know we'd get into those tough spots, and we had one place cleaned off the back up there going towards the school. Not far from where Trenton told you that big poplar tree was, up in that area. But it's on the right of the railroad track. And we even got the Hanson's mule and a jumping coaler and went up there, and I had a patch of corn up there where we cleared off one piece of ground on the park. And we had
Was this after the park?
Oh yeah, the park rangers. Park rangers in there.
They
Yeah.
already taken the land.
45,000 acres done been bought up at that time.
Okay. Y'all let.
We stayed in there, and we kept increasing our place. And every time if we would have got real hard up for money, we would run a new line. We had more. Yeah. So I guess if I hadn't left and joined the army, he'd probably owned half the park, you know. And so that was one of the things we did. I know one thing we did for money. Jeff, you asked about how how he put groceries on the table and stuff like that. We went down in that park there and pulled up mostly maples, dogwoods. We had an old Model A Ford at that time, and I had a shovel and a mattock. So we tied big bundles of those bushes that we pulled up and little trees, and tied on each fender of the car, and we took off. We went all the way down through Brownsville and stopping at every house. Dad was selling trees. He'd say, I'll sell them to you for one price and you set them out, or I'll sell them to you for another price. My boys set them out and we'll guarantee them to live. So we went on and got over there next to going towards your Aunt Gladys's, Harry's, stopping, and some of them would let me set the trees out, and some they were tight with money, they would want to set them out themselves. But we'd guarantee the ones we set out, and we got rid of a bunch of those trees, and that was over 50 years ago, and I imagine they're still living there, good-sized trees now. Kind of like Johnny Appleseed, you know, going to you can get an apple tree started. Anyhow, we was over at Gladys's there one time. We'd made a trip over there doing stuff like that, and Gladys said, somebody up the road here found a license plate that's over at that house, and Dad said, well, ours is run out. And Dad says, you reckon we could get it? And I said, sure. I said, you just stump over on the way back. So he got over at that house, we were going back home, and I walked in there, I said, did you find a license plate out here somewhere? Yes, I did. I said, well, I appreciate you picking it up. I said, we lost it and we need it. And it was a right new one, you know. And so I got that license plate and I put it on that old Model A, and I taken some mud and spliced up on it, you know, kept it dirty all the time so he couldn't read it too good. We drove that thing for a whole year with that license plate. We didn't even know who it belonged
Well,
to.
did y'all have electricity?
No electricity. We had kerosene lamps.
What did y'all do for entertainment?
By the way, they didn't call them kerosene lamps. They call them
Coal oil, yeah.
You're in the Tar Heel state. Here in the Tar Heel state, you call it kerosene, but in Kentucky it was coal oil.
Right. Well, anyway, what did Grandpa and Grandmother, did they ever go off for?
Back when I was young, they used to go to dances. There was a dancing party. They won prizes, dancing.
Where did they go? I mean, where at?
It was in the country, and they would have square dances and round dances and stuff like that, and they were good dancers, and they would dance. They were both good dancers.
What did
that was them.
Yeah.
But our entertainment was surviving, I guess.
Yeah, I know Jeffrey's bands, the rest of know how and what they did.
They were dancers, and they were good at it too. My mother could Charleston.
Oh, Uncle Trent, of course, we know that Grandpa couldn't read, but Grandmother, she had a pretty good education, and she kept up with the check writing and things like that. We don't have.
Yes, I would say she did all that. Yeah.
And she was also good about herbs and.
Oh, she was good on herbs. She knew things, and I mean, she didn't hardly ever have to have a doctor at our house, because she knew some kind of old home remedy, or it was good for about anything, you know. She knew. She was real good. I wish I knew some of what. I used to help her. I used to help her get together this stuff, but I thought everybody did it, and everybody knew it, and I didn't give it a second thought, and then after it was too late, I realized that very few people knew it like she did.
Well, what was a typical day, let's say in the winter, you know, Grandmother and Grandpa, what was it? They got you kids up and send you to school, but what would they do a typical day? Of course, you know, Grandmother had to get up and cook the old-fashioned way and all like that. So what happened, let's say, after she fixed breakfast?
She had work to do. She'd work from the time she got up to the time she went to bed. She had, with a bunch of kids like that, she had things planned out. She would wash one day, and she would hatch one day, and she'd iron another day. So that would take 3 days of the week right there. And she was a fanatic about cleaning the house, and kept the house so clean that it was miserable. And like Trenton said, that she put white sheets on the bed, and I guarantee you, we did not ever sit on a bed or lean against the bed. That was a no-no. But when I was a small kid, I remember if we had an electrical storm, she would have all us kids to get on the bed, sit on the bed and get our feet off the floor. And we had some time we could get on a bed. But you see, one of the reasons you couldn't get on the bed is because they had straw ticks. And they'd stir up that straw and make those beds up, and if you put your hand and put a weight on them, you had a duck nest or something, and it looked terrible. You couldn't have that. You couldn't wrinkle up the bed, and you didn't touch that bed till bedtime.
Well, did Grandmother and Grandpa ever, said going dancing, did they ever, like, just go off and visit, or like people do nowadays, or like if somebody had to go to the store, I know it wasn't very often, they just out and out went to the store, but who did go? Was it Grandmother and Grandpa, or just Grandpa would go get it, or how did they do that, compared to what folks do nowadays?
I was just thinking while you were asking that question, I don't think they were too lonesome because they had 13 children. I know you said don't do that, don't say that, okay. Well, evidently had not a whole lot to do. Right there in the morning. And I think they should have stopped when the second come around, but they didn't. Well, like I said, now, my dad, when we moved up to Mammoth Cave, of course, he did go to work at the caves, and he worked at the caves for several years. And so, yeah, I know that at one time, he, in later years, that he even went to Indiana and worked. And used to raise a lot of tomatoes in Indiana, and at a certain time of the year, you could go up there and make pretty good money picking tomatoes in the fields. But my mother, as far as her, I don't think she ever had a day she wasn't doing something. I know I used to, when she was be patching mostly, she'd go barefooted, like Trenton said. In the summertime, I'd have to sit down in the floor in front of her and tickle her feet. And she'd dip, snuff, and hum, and patch, 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 patch. And then when I get through tickling her feet, she still had something to do while she was sitting there. I had to get the comb and just comb her hair, just comb over and over, just keep combing. It felt good to her head, combing her hair. And she had black, straight hair. It was pretty. And then I would give her eye treatment. She kept a little glass. She kept bluestone water in, had a little white rag in it. And every day I would have to hold her head back and wash her eyes out with that bluestone water. And she had, I guess, about all the teeth when she died. That she was never lost any of her teeth. But she never used nothing but a gum stick that she'd take. I'd go out and help her get them. A gum stick, chew the end of it, and make little brushes out of it. And she had a little bit of glass. She keeps soda in, and she keep them down in, and that's what she brushed her teeth with. And she kept pretty white teeth, even though she was dip snuff. And that's the way she would take care of her teeth. And
well, how were they about disciplining the kids? Were they real strict, or y'all just automatically knew to stay out of the way and be quiet? How did that, about looking after all those kids, how to keep them all under control?
well, my mother, she didn't do much whipping or anything like that, but she would tell Dad, and Dad would. He had a little thing he called a razor strap. He sharpened his razor on it, and it had two straps. And it had a little metal thing at the top where he'd hang it up on a nail, and it had two straps on the thing. It had, I guess, one for fine sharpening, one for coarse sharpening or something, but that's the way he'd sharpen his old straight razor. And that was his whipping too, and it was saved him a lot of effort with that many kids, because he'd take that thing, he'd swing it, and the first flap would hit you. Then here come the second one hit. He'd only have to make one sling and hit you twice with that thing. But I always started squalling real loud before he ever hit me with it, make him think he's hurt me, you know, and make him bet up on me a little bit. I got quite a few of them things myself. And I guess I deserved every one of them. But my mother, I don't remember her ever whipping anybody. I know she used to, you know, tell him, and he would do it later. But we got plenty of whippings.
Well, what about, like, when Jeff asked about holidays? Of course, we already know that 4th of July was the main holiday. But didn't y'all, like at Christmas, what did y'all do?
We didn't do much of anything Christmas because we didn't have the money, but sometimes we would wake up and in our shoes we'd find maybe a little candy, hard candy. But before we went to school, Miss Delphi Noreen was a teacher of her age school, and bless her heart, she would try to see that all the kids that didn't have anything at least get a little paper bag of candy. I had one, and that would probably be all we would get for Christmas. But we had Christmas party at the school.
Yeah.
We did celebrate Christmas at school. We had us boys would go down in the woods and cut a Christmas tree, and we'd drag it and put it up, and we'd decorate it with our homemade decorations like popcorn, stringing popcorn and stuff like that, and fix decorations. We would have a pretty tree, and we did one year. Had a Christmas that I will never forget.
What?
Well, back when I was a little fella, going to school, age school, there was some people that lived down towards Sloan's Crossing, and Trenton mentioned on his tape when he said Sloan's Crossing, on the right down there, that they had a daughter that taken polio. And she couldn't walk. It crippled her. These people were, I guess if it was possible, was even poorer than we were. And our teacher, Miss Delphin Noreen, thought it would be a good idea if we could do something for her for Christmas. So she wrote it on a piece of paper and wrote out the girl's name and what was the matter with her, her problem, and it given us permission to go around over the country and collect donations for that girl for Christmas, little girl. So a bunch of us boys each had a paper, and we hit the road. Back then we had CC camps, and around there, and me and Harvard Meredith, he helped me. I mostly stayed with him, you know, on this project, and we went around to these houses and CC camps, and anywhere we could get even a penny. We walked, and we walked every day. We went down in the Doyle Valley at Trenton called it the Doyle Pond, which it was, but it was in what we known as Doyle Valley, old Greg Doyle. We went to his house, and we got, oh, it's like $2 or $3, I guess, or something. He had a sister. I believe it was his sister lived in another house in the Doyle Valley. We went to that house, and these people were wealthy. They had more land they knew what to do with. And she gave us 3 pennies. But we accepted. 3 pennies was 3 pennies more than we had before we stopped there. We'd take anything we could get. We worked and worked on that, and come Christmas time, Santa Claus come out behind the curtain. They had a curtain up on the stage. Rolling in a wheelchair, brand new wheelchair. And of course this girl seen it, and she knew the reason it was her. She come as crying. And we had her a brand new wheelchair. We had her bedroom shoes, pajamas, house coat, and all of that stuff. And this was for this girl that never dreamed of ever having anything like that. I don't even remember the people's name. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's great.
And
But anyway,
that was a big Christmas.
yeah, that was great. But you mean the grandpa and grandmother never made an extra effort for any holidays like Thanksgiving or Easter? I mean, this was just another day. Didn't they make any mention of it or anything? What about birthdays? What did they do about y'all's birthdays?
Try to forget it. No, we didn't have no birthday parties. No, not really.
I know, but didn't they say well, happy birthday to you?
No. No.
Nothing?
I don't remember anybody ever saying happy birthday to me.
I know Uncle Trenton said there's definitely no, affections towards your kids. Of course, it's understandable that many, but didn't grandmother ever try to make an effort to one of the kids usually? And a
Yeah,
family,
she
there's
did to
always
me.
one
She
favorite.
did to me.
How did that come about?
First, I'd like to say about the holidays. Trenton, he's on the impression that our mother died in September, but she died in November.
Right.
It was a day, it was either Thanksgiving Day or the day after Thanksgiving she died. And also, I could be wrong, but I've been all these years thinking our mother cooked our breakfast that morning, because I remember big biscuits on the table. I remember the steaming breakfast, and I don't think any of us ate. But I believe, Trenton, if I understood right, you know, my hearing's bad. I believe he said Dad cooked breakfast because our mother didn't feel good. But I believe he's mistaken. I mean, I stand to be corrected if I'm not right. But I believe he's mistaken. Our mother cooked breakfast and went in there and sat down in a rocking chair and died. Right after Trenton. Trenton's right about her sitting in a rocking chair and taking her to the bed. That part. But I think she cooked breakfast. Now, what was we talking about now? You said we'd tell.
About if you ever have any
Oh, yeah, well,
favorites you ever, you know, look after, you know, one of the kids.
after, when, this is getting back in hard times again. After Harry and Gladys got married, they were living up at the place called Showmont. And Harry was working on the farm for something like $1 a day, I believe, but he was getting commodities, what they call commodities, and they had to be picked up over to Mammoth Cave, the old historical entrance part of Mammoth Cave. And he couldn't go get them, and he had me to go get them, and that's how I learned to spell Mattingly, Mattingly. Now, Noreen and them, I don't think knows anything about this. It was before. I mean, they don't know about it. And I would go and pick up the commodities for Harry and Gladys and bring them back. I know that some of that stuff smelled so good, and I would be so hungry, but I didn't dare to touch nothing. And at this place is where I got commodities for them every once a week. I'd walk to Mount Cave and get them and walk back. And from this place, they moved to Louisville. Harry got a job in Louisville, and that's when they went to Louisville and left the country. Well, they moved on an old open bed truck, stake body truck, and I went to Louisville with Gladys, and I rode on the back of that truck with the furniture to stay and kind of help Gladys get her house straightened up and get organized. While, and, you know, Harry was working public work, he couldn't help her. And I don't know whether I was going a week or 2 weeks or what, but anyhow, when things got okay, Gladys and Harry bought a ticket, put me on a train, and put me under the care of a conductor. He was, you know, to see that I was okay and get off at Park City. I hear a song or something. And when I got to Park City, Gordon met me there at the railroad station, and me and him walked home. Now, what I'm getting at, now after I got home, my mother was in the kitchen, and I wanted to know where she was, and she come over to the table and she sat down. She said, "How was Louisville?" I said, "Big, big." "Well, how did it look?" I said, "Bright." I said, they got lights all over that place. I said, they're everywhere, outside and everywhere. I said, it just lights up. Night looks like the daytime. I never seen nothing like it, you know. I didn't. Living back in the country where they didn't even have electricity, you know. And she talked to me about Louisville, I guess, roughly 15 minutes. And I really enjoyed it, her talking to me. And I'll be honest with you, that's the only time I know of that she ever sat down and just talked to me. 15 minutes. I can remember in my lifetime. You know, she, I guess, just had so much to do she couldn't take up no time. But I never was one time told that I was loved, I was cared for, or anything by anybody. As I know of, I don't ever remember. They just, like Trenton said, I didn't do it. That's why I like to tell you and Margaret, I love you.
Well, what about Gordon? I know that he was the problem child from time go. Didn't him and Uncle Trenton always kind of have a problem? Didn't he sort of have a nickname, Uncle Trenton? And why did he call him that nickname?
He called him Good Thing. Gordon couldn't talk plain, at one time, and he couldn't talk. I know one time before we moved to Mammoth Cave, they used to fix playhouses. And I don't know where this place was. Now Trenton probably knows. It was sort of like a hill here and a hill going like a V shape. Trenton was over here. Gordon was over here. Each one of them had a playhouse. They may make their playhouses. I know I was out there at the time, and Gordon said, "Hey, Good Thing. What? Come over here. I got something for you, Good Thing." So Trenton went running nowhere as hard as he could. Boy, he's going to go get something. He got it. Gordon jumped on and beat the fire out of him, running back across the little ravine, whatever it was, over there. I never will forget that. I don't know whether Trenton remembers that now, but Gordon just beat the snot out of him. Gordon beat him up. He called him Good Thing because Gordon was jealous. He thought that Trenton got more attention from his mother than he should have, or he got, or something, and he called him Good Thing. He meant to say good thing, but he's a good thing. I know he really fixed Trenton up that time. But Gordon was mean with everybody, I guess, except me. I don't remember ever. No, I used to box with him. Trenton bought I think it was Trenton bought a pair of boxing gloves there. And one time, and I used to box with anybody I could put them gloves on with, and I used to box around with Gordon. I know one time I put him on with him, and he was going at it pretty good, and he hit me upside the head, and I sat down, and it was dark as night. I didn't know why it got so dark. I got my eyes closed. I'd take my fingers and put a pair of my eyes was open. But he knocked me blind as a bat, and I couldn't see nothing. I know one time I got there with guarded. I thought I was pretty good, And he got me turned sideways somewhere, and he hit me upside the head. I'm going to throw my weight over on one ankle, sprung my ankle. But, yeah, Gordon was always a troublemaker. I know that big boys would go out in the fields to work, and he'd go with them. But he'd start a fight with them, and then he'd have an excuse to come to the house.
Well, what about the time that him and Uncle Trenton got into it at the dinner table?
Oh, that was Gordon. Trenton had a habit, when he drank coffee. I'm going to tell on you, Trenton. You want to listen to me, boy. He would stick his little finger up there. I don't know whether he still does. You can still get that finger up there, Trenton. And he drank coffee. He sat right in front of Gordon on the other side of the table. It didn't take much to set Gordon off. I mean, just a little bit, boy. He was ready to go. He got to look at Trenton's finger, and he got mad, Hey, get that down there, you sissy or something, But he threw a big old biscuit at Trenton, and he hit Trenton's coffee. When he did, the coffee just went up like that. So here they went right over the table and locked hooks right over the table, just, Dad, we had a big old wooden box at the back of the cook stove. He just gets up and doesn't say nothing. Goes over and gets him a stick of wood. He comes back, bam, bam, broke up the fight, sat back down, everybody finished eating.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know what he ever done about his fingers.
Well, what about the time what was going on when Gordon hit Uncle Trenton with a hammer? I think he was a witness to that.
Oh yeah, Trenton said something about Gordon hitting him in the head with a hammer, but Trenton didn't tell that he was running like a scared deer when Gordon hit him with a hammer. He was going across the place, that's what we call it. I believe we had terms. So next to the locust orchard, and Trenton was, boy, he was picking them up and putting them down, and that hammer hit Trenton right back here in the back of the head, and it glanced off his head and went up in the air. And that wasn't the only time Trenton got hit in the head either. He got hit in the head with a rock one time after that.
Where did that?
One of the Hanson boys, me and Trenton was over there, and we was, I believe it was in the front yard swinging or something on their swings, and Boots and Coy, me and Trenton. And I don't know, something happened, but Coy, I believe it was, said something, Trenton slapped him or something, and Coy picked up a rock and hit Trenton in the head with it. Then their mother, I believe her name was Samaris or something like that, she come to the door and run me and Trenton off, told us get on home so we could play up. We had to come back by Earl Hanson's place, and down behind Earl Hanson's place, between his place and ours, was what they called a woodlot, and in that woodlot was a swamp area where it was just marsh, you know, swamp water, black looking water. I got Trenton down there, and he had that place, he was just, blood was just pouring, his little top of his head was breathing blood. I got him down on his back and stuck his head down in that swamp and that water and washed that blood. I don't know if it was one he hadn't taken poison or some kind of poison in that place to kill him, but I washed his head in the swamp water. And I guess it healed up okay, as far as I know it did.
Well, you got during the time period that Grandpa and Gordon got into it.
You mean about the time Dad shot Gordon?
Yeah. What started
No,
that?
that
Do you
was,
remember?
Trenton wasn't there then. I don't know where Trenton was, but anyhow, Gordon threw a big rock. It was a big rock, and he hit Dad on his left chest here. And I had been up there to the schoolhouse, and I heard screaming down at the house. Everybody just started screaming like they had a death in the family or something. And so I started trotting pretty fast because it wasn't that far. And I didn't get very far trotting until I heard a shotgun go off. Boom! So I got there in just a few minutes, and Ella run and met me and told me that Dad had shot Gordon. And I said, tell me what happened. He said, well, Gordon hit Dad with a rock, and Dad ran the house and got the shotgun and shot him. I said, where was Gordon at when he shot him? He said, he was running across the same place where Trenton got hit with a hammer, heading for the woods. And I said, well, did he fall or what? I said, no, he just staggered and kept going. So I went in the hallway where Dad kept his shotgun shells, and I got all the shotgun shells and I put them in my pocket in case Gordon circled back around and they wanted to have some more shooting. I didn't want, I'd taken shotgun shells away from Dad. So I started hunting Gordon, going through the woods. I made a circle back around to the little age schoolhouse, and I found him laying up there in one of the school seats on his belly. And I pulled his shirt up and his breeches down and got some of the shots out of his back that picked him out, but he wasn't hurt bad.
So what happened when he went back to the house?
He didn't go back for a while. I don't know where he laid out for a while somewhere.
And Grandpa cooled down and everything
Oh
was
yeah.
okay?
Once he done that, he was all right. I think he got through crossing at the mouth. Well, he was pretty mad when I got there.
Then he really, when he got really mad, he really got really mad. I mean, really.
Yeah, he was frost at the mouth. Slobber come out of his mouth, and it just, yeah. I made him. He did like that with me one time.
That's wasn't long after Grandmother died, wasn't it?
He did.
We
that.
get into that after a while, because we've got some
Yeah.
other stuff. We'll kind of
Okay.
finish up with that later. But then Grandpa kind of got, before y'all moved there, somebody almost killed him?
Yeah, he got cut up real bad. It was, I was young, he was very young at that time. A fellow by the name of Carl Jordan cut him. I think, well, I understand 2 men held his arms around a tree while Carl cut him. this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, and went into the holler in several places. And back then it was in July, but every person in July, somewhere around the first, would have a cold spell, and they give him credit for the cool spell helping to save his life. They used to have to run gauze strips in his chest and soak up the blood to keep him from drowning and pull him out. And he had, I guess the day he died, he still had those scars across his chest.
Well, why would they try to kill him? Did you ever find out why?
Not really. I never did know exactly why, but see, Dad was a gambler, and he would mess with whiskey and liquor, and when you get into that, there's always some reason to get into trouble one way or the other. I mean, I figure that,
But nothing was ever done about it, or shown the law, or...
Well, back then, law didn't do much about fighting and stuff, but it was just a common thing.
Yeah. Well, what about, then later on, like you told Jeff about the pig bit, that's after y'all moved to Cave City, wasn't it?
No, not the pig.
Yeah.
No, that was I say it was Warren Smith's place. I don't know what Trenton him says, but that was the big boys. There's two stories about that. I'll tell that and about the pig first.
Yeah.
They was working for Roscoe Benson. He was a wealthy farmer, had lots of land, lots of money. And Dad and the bigger boys were, I believe, clearing up some ground for him, cutting timber, trees, and cutting probably up into wood and burning the brush, that type thing. And I don't know, when it come into the week, Roscoe didn't pay Dad as much as he's supposed to, and kind of shortchanged him a little bit. Dad said, "You owe me some money." He said, "I don't owe you no money, you got it." He said, "If you don't give it to me, I'm going to get one of your pigs there." He had hogs all over the place. Roscoe said, "Well, if you can get one of my pigs without me knowing, you go ahead and get it." He said, "Okay." They went ahead and worked that day, and that night, Dad just stepped out there in the cornfield and got him a ear of corn. He walked up there to think he shelled that corn, And he reached down and put his hands right over the pig's nose, and like that, held his nose so he couldn't squeal. Picked that pig up, put him under his arm, taking him home. And he built a pen right out there in the front of the house, right next to the road. And he put that pig in it, and Roscoe used to ride by there on his mule, go up and down the road on a mule. We didn't live far from where he lived. Dad would, if he was out there in the yard, he'd be horse that pig when Roscoe would go by, and it would be going, old Roscoe never said nothing about it. Dad kept that pig. But at that same place, I remember Rumson, Dad wasn't working over there that day. Rumson and our big boys were working over there, older than me. And I was over there with them, and we started back to the house. It was quitting time, and there's something else I'm going to tell about that too. We got halfway to the house, and they said, "Well, we left our file and water bucket." And I wanted to know if I'd go back and get it. And I said, "Yeah, I'll go back and get them." So I got back over and I had to come back through a field, and I was thinking about snakes. I'm going to get snake bit if I don't watch it. So I thought, well, I'll put that bucket on my arm, and I'll peck on the bottom of that bucket with a file, and I'll scare them snakes away while I'm running. So the faster I run, the harder I beat, because I want to make a lot of racket. And I got up with him. I handed Rumsey the file and the bucket, and he picked that bucket up. It looked like a sifter or something. He just pitched the bucket over the bushes. I done beat the bottom out of it. But that was the same place where Gordon had been working over there with him, and he had started another fight. And he went to the house, and we had a fireplace there, and it had some hot coals. No, it had a fireplace, and my mother had heated some flat irons on the fire there somewhere, and she had those irons sitting on the hearth. And we was over there, and we heard all this squalling we ever heard in our life. And Gordon had backed up barefooted and put his heel against one of those hot irons, and he come out in the yard screaming like he'd die. And everybody quit work and run over there, and all he had was a scorched heel. But at that same house, now a girl, Ruby, Ella was a little bitty girl, and we did get some Christmas there. But I remember Ella got a little bugle, go doo-doo-doo. And Gordon had slipped and got it, and he went in the room there where the trunk was that they were talking about on the tape, you know, Wells' trunk, family trunk. Gordon got over behind that trunk, and he would raise up, and he ducked down behind it. Ella's in there hollering, I want my bugle, I want my bugle. And he'd raise up, and duck down, you know. And back then, that big cast iron trying to talking about they did divorcing him, or made hominy in it and everything, you know. They had that sitting in there. They'd take red hot coals out of the fireplace and fill that thing up with red hot coals to keep the room warm at night. But the fire had died out and wasn't nothing in it but ashes. And Ella said, I want my bugle. So Gordon raised up, and she had her hands in the ashes. And when he looked, she threw them ashes right over the top of that trunk and hit Gordon right in the face. He filled up his eyes and here he goes, but he's throwing a fit. But Ella got her bugle, and but he threw a fit.
In other words, Grandpa.
That was the same trunk that Trenton's got today.
Yeah, what you talking about? Of course, I don't know if it's still in it. Like grandmother collected buttons. Jeff may be
in that trunk. She had a jar that had buttons that went back, way back, I guess the 1912 war or something, especially the Civil War, that overcoat buttons and different things. And I used to, once she was sewing, I used to sit on the floor and I'd pour those buttons out. To me, they looked like money. I liked to play with them. And she would tell me, I believe if I could see them, I could pick out her daddy's button off of her daddy's overcoat today, if it was still there. But those buttons, I was hundreds of years old, some of them, you know, and gosh, yes, she did. She saved those buttons, and I used to love to look at those buttons because I could seem like I could just almost take myself back in the past.
Yeah. But anyway, like Uncle Trent said, and none of the kids, except for Gordon, ever talk back to Grandpa. Is that true? I mean, what he said, y'all used, automatically hush, you know, because he was apparently rather quick-tempered too, wasn't he?
He was very high-tempered, and yeah. But there comes a time in your life sometimes when you have to stand up on your own.
Yeah, we're going to get into that a little further, but let's leave that to it. Oh, wow. Because, like Uncle Trenton said, it's sort of a quick thing about grandmother dying. But wasn't there an accident or something about a few days or a week or so before she died? An injury, and you kind of wondered if that could
Yes,
happen.
Gordon. Yes, it was.
I think you should tell that.
Gordon was throwing one of his fits out there. It was between the house and the railroad dummy line. And he was jumping on somebody or something, and our mother went out to break it up. And it was an old, big old root off one of them oak trees. You know, the dirt had washed away from some of those trees, and the roots was exposed, and sometimes the roots would break off. And he picked up one of them roots and was going to hit somebody with it. She went in to stop him, and he hit her right across her legs, both her knee and above her ankle, that big thing, and made a real bad place on her leg. And that I've wondered about that. I don't know. Should I say it?
Yeah.
I've thought over the years since I found out about blood clots and stuff like that, and I've wondered if she had a blood clot from that.
Went to her heart or brain?
One went from her heart or her brain, yes.
Because it wasn't too long after that
She
died.
Right.
I just wondered if you ever remember hearing a complaint about
I don't think any of the other family knows anything about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was there and I seen it. I know it.
But do you remember if she complained of a headache or anything before she died?
I wouldn't know. And she could have, and I didn't know about it.
All right, now how did things change after grandmother died, as far as your family life?
Well, me
Now,
and
you
Dad at that
Now,
time.
okay, now let me clarify what I'm getting at. Now, you was approximately, what, 14? When grandma was 14 or 15 when grandmother died?
Well, she died in 1936.
Yeah. You're about
Okay.
14, right?
I was about 14 years old.
And then Elder was approximately 11. But you just turned 11.
Yeah, I'm over 3 years older than Ellen,
Okay.
yeah.
So how did things change for your family life?
Well, the times still stayed hard, but it got worse. And I think, really, you see, Dad had a niece, her name was Maud Sternberger, who was, I guess, divorced from her husband. She wasn't living with him. She had 2 children, a little boy and a girl. Geraldine and Bud was their names. And of course, they didn't have a home, and Dad gave them a home, and that she'd come and just sort of taking over cooking and keeping house, I guess, and everything else. And it was all right in a way, but in another way, Dad would believe anything that Maud would say. And Maud had a very mean daughter, Geraldine, that would lie, tell lies on Ella. Cause Ella would get whippings from Dad that she shouldn't have got, a lot of them, maybe some, but not all of them. Dad would just all cut the blood out of Ella's legs sometimes, things that he wouldn't tell Ella to say, I didn't do it, and he wouldn't believe him. And that was a problem, but far as a cook, Maud was good. I never had a crossword with Maud myself. And she was clean. Right as I said, a real good cook.
You had a
And
dog.
we did need her.
Yeah, but how did she treat the other kids, the little ones?
She treated them all right, except Maud treated them all right, except Geraldine would do something mean and tell her mother that one of them did it, and Maud wouldn't get on the kids. She'd go tell
Okay, now
Dad.
you were working, helping bring in money at this
Yes,
time.
I was doing everything I could to make money and help, and I was, yeah.
And you had a dog, didn't you?
Had a dog named Chip, little black and white dog that I had got it from a fellow down near Diamond Caverns, and that little dog, I made a trainer him for a squirrel dog, and one day the dog, I think got kicked by a mule or either hit by a car, and it crushed his head in and knocked out one of his eyes. And I was afraid my little dog was going to die.
This is in the winter, wasn't it?
Yes. And Maud and Dad was 2 people that the dogs wouldn't come in their house, but due to the time I was doing all this work and turning my money over to feed the little ones, I figured that I had a little say-so too. So I knew my dog was going to, and Reason was going to die, but I wanted to do everything I could for it. And so one day I went out and I got my dog, and I went and got an old coat, and I walked in the house with that dog, and I stood Dad and Maud was sitting in the living room in front of the fireplace, and I says, my dog is hurt, my dog is sick. I'm gonna make a bed on this hearth for my dog. My dog's gonna stay here in this house. And I was gonna fight for it. But they didn't open their mouth, they didn't say nothing. And I kept my dog in there, and I would go fix gravy and put a teaspoon and put gravy in feed it spoonfuls of gravy, and I nursed that dog back to health.
Well, how were you and Grandpa getting along at that time?
Well, actually, we were getting along good. I mean, me and him, we had a lot of schemes. Like I told you about the wood business and so forth, and cutting timber and enlarging a place and selling timber and hunting and
Yeah. Well,
different
anyway,
things.
we keep.
But my sister Ella,
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
she one day we had sat down to eat.
Now, how old were you when this happened? How long
Maybe
after grandmother died?
I don't know. I might have been about 16 years old then.
About a year after grandmother.
No, 2 years.
Remember? You know what? You're right.
You see,
Yeah.
in 4 years I was gone.
Yeah, okay, this is about 2 years after grandmother died. And everything, as far as you and grandpa was going okay.
We were doing okay.
Okay, now tell what happened.
Well, now Trenton said we never had a crossword. Well, I didn't have a crossword with Dad, but, and I knew what type of person. I knew he was.
He'd kill you if you said
He would kill you. Well, this time I knew for a fact Dean was telling her mother a lie on Ellen. It's something that said Dean did something that's telling her mother that Ella did it. And Dad at the table was not going to even finish his eating and wasn't going to even ask Ella. He got up and going to get that big old switch that you could whip a horse with. I got to thinking right quick, now I bring in food, I'm working every day, and I have a can, and I'm buying groceries, I'm feeding this up and feeding that. In fact, I brought him more money than Dad. And he's going to whip my sister again for something she didn't do. And I said, yeah, I can't let him do it. So I said, Dad, Ella didn't do it, and you're not going to whip her for it. Of course, that's when it hit the fan, you know. And no son of his would talk to him like that. And I said, Ella didn't do it, you're not going to whip her. So he jumped up and ran his hand in his pocket, and he pulled out his knife. He had a little keen blade about that long, he kept it, you could shave with it. He grabbed that knife. We had those old king bottom straight back chairs. So I stood up and I reached back and got my chair. I brought it up over my head. We were standing face to face. He had his knife in his hand, I had the chair.
And he was shaking, he was so mad.
He was shaking like a leaf on a tree. His slobber was running out of his mouth. His eyes were in a thick state. And there I was, I had that chair. I said, you're not going to whip Ella. She didn't do it. Then Ella jumped up and run all the way around and run in between me and Dad when I was just fixing to drive him through the floor. Dad put his knife in his pocket, sat down, and I set my chair down and we finished eating.
Everything's okay after that?
No, I told Dad. We were cutting wood. I was both pulling a H-tooth cross-cut saw, and I stopped sawing. I said, Dad, I know you're mean as the devil, but I said, I want you to know I'm your son, and I'm as mean as you are. I want you to always remember that. He just looked at me, spit on his hand, and started sawing.
Well,
I never had no more trouble out of Dad after that.
Well, then, didn't they never leave home about that time?
After that she did. I don't remember the exact how long it was, but she did. Yeah, Ella left home, I think she's about 13, when she having somebody clean house.
Yeah. And
Or
then
something.
that's about the time you started, you wanted to join the army. Grandpa didn't want you to, did he?
No, he didn't want me to join because I was bringing in some money, and he didn't want to lose that money. All the rest of the boys gone. I was the only one there then. Trenton wasn't there, Gordon wasn't there, Rumsey, Garnett, none of them.
Yeah.
They all left, and I had it with Dad out there in a space that Trenton don't know anything about, or any of the rest of them.
Right.
They don't know what all we had to do. They don't know about me and Dad going to the cornfields, getting corn that they had missed when they gathered corn, and corn would be so bad we would shell it. We'd take it to Sloan's Crossing to the mill down there, and we wouldn't let them grind our corn. We would trade our corn for meal and get it and go back home, but we didn't want to eat that because some of it was molded and musty. And that's the way we would get corn, and of course we would sell rabbits, take rabbits and things to possums to Cave City and sell to the colored people to get money. And every way you can think of, we had to penny pinch to try to get money, and that's the way it was. And work had got scarce, and me and Branchford Dole was working in diamond caverns. We were working opening up avenues in diamond caverns, which later had been cleaned out, opened up, and is open to tourist people now. And I was working, getting $1 a day for that. And had a little company come in, got a little interruption right there. Might be a little space in this film right here, in the tape. It was talking about me joining the Army. First I asked Dad about it, and he said he wouldn't sign for me. Said he, of course, he wanted me to stay on. I was the only one left there to help him keep things going. Judy said, "Sit up in the chair, Daddy." And so I went ahead and went to Bowling Green and got my papers anyhow. So when I come back, I knew Dad wouldn't sign the papers, so I went over to Upper Links and asked him. I said, "Hey, I'm going to join the Army. I need somebody to sign the papers for me." And he laughed and said, "Oh," I said, "they won't take you in the Army. You're too little, too skinny." I said, "You just sign the paper for me and let me worry about that." Here goes Ruby. And
So he said.
Signed the paper for me. Excuse the interruptions here. Okay, and he signed the paper for me, and I had to have at least one more signature. And we had a mailman back then. His name was Rube Dickerson, and he. So I looked up the road there one day and seen him coming down the road, and I thought, "Mr. Dickerson, I'll get you to put your signature on there." So I stopped him, asked him if he would, tell him what I was planning on doing. He said, "Sure, I'll be glad to." So that's all I needed. So the day I left, I went by Rumsey's place. He lived down in the Boiling Springs area. That's when him and Mary Elizabeth was together, married. And I've been helping Rumsey Ranch Mart that summer in with some of his crops, strawberries and all that he was raising. And I told him, I said, "Rumsey, I'm going to join the Army, and you got any money?" I said, "I ain't got any money. If you got any money, you could let me have a little money." He said, "Well, no." We said, "I'm going to sell a calf tomorrow." Said, "If you'll just wait till tomorrow," said, "You have some money, I'll give you some." I said, "I can't wait tomorrow." I said, "I'm going today." I said, "I made up my mind, I'm going to join the service." I was heading for Bowling Green. That's where I joined, signed up, and of course I went later to Fort Knox. But he said, "Well, I got 50 cents, that's all I got. But if you wait till tomorrow," I said, "I can give you some more." I said, "Just give me the 50 cents, I'd be all right." So what I had when I left Kentucky, 50 cents in my pocket. As I tell my girls here, Judy and Mark, I said, "Well, I had 50 cents left, but I didn't owe nobody nothing. Now I got 50 cents."
Hey, cut.
Okay, where we at, Judy, on the tape? Huh?
Well, I think maybe you ought to kind of some of that about what,
What are you laughing about?
what did you say?
Okay. Okay. Oh, Judy's laughing at me now. Okay. Okay. You know, I'd like to say something about my dad. You know, I'd mentioned the fact about the bit about Ella and Dean, Mom. You know, I'm not proud of that had to happen. I'm not ashamed of it either, because I guess it had to happen. It wasn't a choice, it wasn't no making mine, it's just another one of those things kind of forced on you that you just have to take care of in life. But I didn't hold any. I did what I intended to do, and that's it. I wasn't gonna let Della get a whipping again now. And if I had to do over, I'd do it again the same way. But I'm not proud of it. It's a shame if something like that has to happen. But I always will love my dad, and I always will. I have all respect for him in the world. I know, I used to like to tell a little story about him. It's a story you can believe or you don't have to believe. But anyhow, when the park rangers come in there, they were bullies. They carried those 45s on their sides, and they were so bad, they was going to scare them little Kentuckians to death. In fact, they scared them so bad that one time they fished out one park ranger out of Green River and had a turning plow tied to him. A whole lot of people gathered around, you know, and looking. My dad, Jim, he rubbed his chin. He said, I just don't understand it. I just don't understand it. I can't figure it out. I don't understand it. And they couldn't figure why he would have such, you know, tender feelings for the Rangers. They said, Mr. Jim, what are you talking about? I just don't understand it. I said, what do you mean? He said, I can't understand why anybody would waste a good turning plow with all these big rocks around here. So, now you can believe that if you want to, or really go on. But
by the way, why don't you kind of, got some time, kind of fill us in a little more about the little ones. What do you remember about the little ones you growing up, Coach? After Uncle Trenton and them had left.
Well, the little ones growing up, when I was there, Conard was quiet. He was always quiet and shy. Then Harry was a little bit more bold and Conard, but he was a little bit on the shy side too. And he, I remember about Harry, when he would sleep in bed, he'd get up on his knees and sleep on his all fours and lay in bed like that and sleep like that. He's the only one in the family I ever seen sleep like that.
Well, did they kind of more or less stick together as far as playing with each other, or
Pretty
were they
much so.
kind of loners too, like you were?
Well, I think Conard, of course, Conard and Harry grew up together pretty much, and they was pretty good.
What about James? I heard that he was a very smart little boy.
Yes, they say that's, old folks said that when they come along like James, they very seldom would live. They couldn't raise them because...
Well, how do you mean he was smart? What did he do?
Well, he had the mind of a grown person almost. I mean, he could talk to you, and he'd sit down and cross his legs like I'm crossing my legs and talk to you, and he could answer questions you wouldn't believe. He's only 4 years old when he died. And Mr. Chaplin that lived up on at the Proctor Hotel, he used to come down and just sit and talk to James. And people loved to talk to him. I know one day, him and I were out in the front yard. Every day about 11 o'clock, the mail plane would fly over. And this one day he says, you see that airplane flying? I said, yeah. He says, one of these days, pretty soon, I'm going to be flying like that. I didn't think much about it, but it wasn't long. He already had a rupture, and he jumped off of that rick of wood, and his intestines came through, and he died immediately after that. I thought about it afterwards, but at the time I didn't think about it. But he was just a smart boy.
Well, did, back then, the funeral, didn't have, you can folks had kind of a misunderstanding about that when that happened? But when James died?
My mother's people had heard that I was the one who was dead, and they came up there thinking that it was my funeral. And our cousins on her side, I got to see him for the first, as far as I know, the first and the last time. Never seen him since, never seen him before. So they thought they was coming to my funeral. Yes, that's true. They'd heard it was Teamon.
Well, making a big effect on the family, wasn't it?
Yes, when James died, it really hurt the family. It really did, because everybody loved that boy, and it hurt. Yes, that was the first death in the family, and I think that we cried so much that later on, when we had another death in the family, we just didn't have no tears left. I think we shed all of our tears.
Well, it's just about a year difference, wasn't it?
Yeah, in sight of, I guess, looked like in 3 years we had 3 deaths. We had 2 in 36, 1 in 35, I guess, 2 years, 3 deaths. And I know Dad called us together when James died, and he talked to us, and he says, well, you know, family is like a set of dishes. As long as you don't break a dish, you can keep the set. But said once you break one dish, it ain't very long till others go along with it. Which is true. I don't know. It did hurt. It hurt real bad. Sure did.
Well, as far as you grew up, you know, after the older ones left, I'm not sure the responsibility kind of falling on. I guess you were the oldest then after Uncle Trenton left.
Yes, I was.
So what did how did things change for you? Is there more work on you, or?
Not really. I worked all the time anyhow, and even when I was real small, I would even work on the house. And when I was just a young boy, I had no sled I made it. I pulled rocks out from the hillside down there and underpinned the back of that house. It was that high off the ground, and I underpinned that house and worked on it. We had they had glasses on the front door. On each side they had window panes, and through the years, it had rotted. And me, just a little kid, I'd taken all that mess out and closed that in solid there. And I did work like that, and the weatherboarding at the bottom would rot, and I'd replace it. And I'd work on that house, and I'd build that porch on the back. And
Well, did they ask you to do that, or did you just volunteer to do that stuff?
I just done it because I wanted to.
Well, did they say, hey, that's great?
No. Nobody did say nothing.
They just took it for granted.
Yeah, like I was supposed to do it.
Nobody even said anything. Yeah. Or look at it and say, that was good, or that's a great idea, or I mean, just nothing to it.
Nothing to it.
They just, another day.
I want to try it right here, just get a little bit. This is a picture took of me and when I was 15 years old at Mammoth Cave, with the Mammoth Cave, a new entrance, the old new entrance to Mammoth Cave, the frozen area, of the guides and my Uncle Link, who is standing slightly to my left behind with a black jacket on. That's Uncle Link. And I'm squatted down with a bunch of grapes laying on my head. The fellow right directly behind me dropped the grapes on my head just as they snapped the picture. And to the extreme left is our bus driver who would go over and pick the tourist people up after they'd come out of the entrance over at New Entrance, bring them back to the hotel. And Uncle Link got me a job at the cave at that time, tying on bumper streamers. Now my salary was $15 a month, but I got all my tips. And I made pretty good with the tips I made. Sometimes I get much as 50 cents a dollar, which that was equal to a day's work on a farm. And for me, that was real good. I did real good while I was working there. And that was back in the better times for me. I hope I'm getting that picture. Now I want to go up just a little further on this. There's a picture of my mother taken. She's holding Harry in her arms, your daddy, and Conrad is on the ground standing beside her. Then another picture taken at the same time in a different pose. And at the top of the page is your Aunt Ella, and to her left is your grandpa, Jim Wells, and another picture there of Aunt Ella. Of course, now on this other side, there's some war pictures. I mean, not armed war pictures, but Army pictures taken at Fort Bragg when I was in the service there. I don't know whether you can see them or not. There I was in a bathing suit, and there I was we were on a rifle range there. I was calling back fire orders from the shooting. They were shooting targets. And there I stood on a post and two of my friends standing on the side of the post, just goofing off. And I'm in those pictures there somewhere or another. But we'll just skip. Jeff in the service, everybody has a best friend, buddy. And mine was this fella here. Him and I went through a lot together, and we both, in most of our combat experience, we had a platoon split between us. He had the mortar section, and I was in charge of the machine gun section. And we would given direct support for our frontline troops, which was riflemen. We would be just a little behind. He would anyhow, but a lot of times I was on the front line with the riflemen because I had to have my machine guns up there shooting direct. And where he was lobbing his shells over all of us on the front line. His name was Frogwood. He lived at High Point, North Carolina. He's also the boy that was a neighbor to my wife, Ruby, who introduced us. And that's how I met Ruby, was through him. Him and I went through a lot together, and that was another friend. That's him again. In this particular shot here, he's walking extra duty. We sometimes got into a little meanness, a little mischief, and we had to do extra duty. Either walk, dig a 6-foot hole like that and bury a match in it, or do extra KP duty or something like that. There he is, still walking. And over this is just some Army pictures. I'm going to just go through them kind of in a hurry because next page I got something I do want you to see. For sure. Now that picture there is a little dog I think I mentioned on the tape, one of the tapes I'm fixing for you. That was Chip, my squirrel dog, one that got hurt. And one I had when I left home. Now that little dog, no matter how long I was gone away from home while I was in service, when I'd go back home, that dog would see me, come running and meet me and jump up in my arms and just lick my face, something terrible. And he never forgot me. That was my little dog, Chip. And I'm going to drop down here. I definitely want you to hope I can get this for you. That is a very old picture. It was taken when your Aunt Ella was approximately 2 weeks old. And that is your Aunt Gladys that's holding her. We don't have Clarence in this picture. I don't know why. He's probably gallivanting around somewhere. But anyhow, if we can get this, the little fella in the front, on the left, right-hand side, with a stripe running down his little uniform, is me. That's Teamon Wells. Directly behind me is Garnet, and a head higher than Garnet there is wait a minute, let me get back on here. It's your Uncle Rumsey. And to your Uncle Rumsey's left is that is Gordon. That's Gordon above me, standing in front of you, Uncle Rumsey. And the next one in the center by Rumsey is your Uncle Garnet, and the one in front of him is your Uncle Trenton. Of course, to the left there is your Aunt Gladys and your Aunt Ella. That's kind of your old picture there. Then at the top again, I want to, well, let's go down to the bottom here. Those two little fellows there, the one on the left is your daddy. One on the right is your Uncle Conrad. I understand you don't see him much. For some reason he don't like to associate with his people. From what I hear, I know he's always been mighty cold to me every time I went to Kentucky. I do know that, and I don't know why. I've always been good to that boy. If it hadn't been for me, he'd probably starved to death at one time, and I guess he just don't remember that kind of stuff. Sorry he's like that, but to each his own. And I wish he would associate with the people up there a little more than what he does. That's Connor. And on up there at the top is your grandma, Mary Alice Wells, and your daddy, the little fellow on the left, and Connor there on the right. And going over to the next one there is my dog Chip. And on the on the left there is Connor. In between is Harry, your daddy, and on the right is Bud Sternberger. Down below is a picture of your Uncle Rumsey when he was in the service. And, of course, we done got that one. And to the bottom here, laying on the side, would be your Aunt Ella to the bottom, your Aunt Gladys. No, I'm wrong on that. Your Aunt Gladys, I believe it's on the bottom. Your Aunt Ella is in the center, and then your Aunt Wanda on top. Now, excuse me while I go over and turn the page. Getting nervous here. At one time, we went to Kentucky to visit. When the girls were kind of young, we visited Dad, and he was working for a cave, I don't know which one, but he was working right near Brownsville, the outskirts of Brownsville there. And that is Judy and Margaret. The one closest to him is Judy, and the other one's Margaret. Down below there is of course, our Pontiac we drove through, and there's Harry standing out in front of Dad. Then over here is some of the cave information, signs. And down at the bottom corner is what you already seen in Locust Grove Cemetery. That's our mother's cemetery. But you never seen your big old fat daddy there, who's on the right. That'd be me on his right. That's your Uncle Harry and myself. Now over here on this next page is it's Wigwam. There used to be a wigwam village out in Cave City up there. It was beautiful. And near the wigwam village was also the memorial for Floyd Collins. Now Floyd Collins was one of my heroes when I was young. I admired him, had a lot of respect for him, because he was a great cave explorer, and I sort of tried to copy after him. I explored a lot of caves by myself, and nobody knew a thing about it. It wasn't a hole, a sinkhole, or a well that caved in that whole neighborhood that I didn't go in. And it's a wonder I hadn't got trapped and killed, but I guess the good Lord had something else for me to do and kind of spared me there. But Floyd, he made a fatal mistake by going in a sand cave, which all explorers knew not to do that. But he'd taken one chance too many. That's where he lost his life. So, down in his monument, you can see it a little better right down there. Okay, that's Floyd Collins. Right there. Now, I think that's all tore down for a new highway. I'm not sure. I don't know hardly anything about Kentucky anymore. But somebody said they thought maybe it's got a big highway going through there, and that's not anymore. I really don't know. Turn this page here. See if we got something else over here. I believe we have. I think this was a picture that was taken after my dad's funeral, after he was buried. And I think that was probably in, I'm not sure, 64 or something like that. It's the last group picture. Last time we was together, there's several in there that's the last time I seen them alive. I mean, last time I seen them. So down at the bottom, I'd like to show you this one. I do hope I'm getting this. This is Noreen and Jimmy back when they first got married. That is the preacher in the white shirt that married them. Hey, skinnies. Look at them. They're just, a little wind could blow them over there right there in the morning. That's them. Then to the right of that is Gladys and her oldest daughters. The one standing on the ground there, look like got on a jumper suit, is Jeanette. And of course, there's Noreen. I don't know much more than 3. I'm sorry to say this. I'm Gladys's daughters, and they're all as sweet as they can be. But that's what you get when you leave home, stay gone. I wished I knew them better. I wished I could have been with them more, because they are such sweet people. I love them all. Now, to this, right now, Jeffrey, this was back several years ago when Ronnie and I, Ella parked over there next to the age school, and Ronnie and I walked into the park. We was all younger, but at that time, Ronnie had a bad case of asthma, and I'll get into that, what happened there. But first, just look at this. This is a well that y'all looked at there next to the railroad track. Still had a few boards around there that hadn't rotted when I seen it at this time. And down below that is that pond that Trenton was talking about. It didn't have no trees. It had willow bushes, more or less, there. And when I was a little fella during the Depression, I went over and cut me a bunch of those willows, and I made me a porch swing. Now, I don't know how I figured that thing out, but I worked on the thing a long time figuring how the most weight you'd put on it, the tighter it would hold together. And I figured that out, and I made that swing, and I put it up out front. Aunt Dee, Dad's sister, Maud's mother, was up there, and she seen that swing. She fell in love with it. Now, I was a small guy, and this was during the Depression. She says, I want to buy that. I didn't know what to say. She said, I'll give you $3 for it. But $3 was $1 million to me. I sold that swing to her. I don't know whatever happened to it, but I just thought now I had really done something great. I made a swing out of willow that somebody liked, and that was good. Now, I'm going to go on down to this. I may have to walk over here and take a closer look at this one to figure out just what this one is. I believe I know, but I want to make sure. So just hold on there just a second. Oh, yeah, that's the bluff. That's down below the house where your Uncle Trenton said this was a wooded area, and he held up both hands. Well, down in that direction, there was a big bluff. It had an open space under the bluff, and it never did get wet. It stayed dry. As a kid, I used to swipe eggs out of the hen nesters, maybe cut them off a little piece of pork off of a shoulder or ham, slip down there and take me an old gallon bucket and some water, and build me a little fire, and I'd boil eggs and roast me some good old pork meat on over the fire, and I'd play like I was an Indian. And to the left of that opening there was a big old flat rock. I can remember that rock real well. And after I'd eat, I'd go out there and stretch out on that rock, go to sleep. I had nothing else to do. I had full tummy, felt good, nowhere to go, nothing to do, so I'd take me a nap. Okay, that's so much for that bluff. I remember that so well. I can see it in my mind just like the back of my hand. And up at the top is a picture of the chimney that was in the house. That picture was taken from the front side of the house. I'm going to tell you something about that place that I don't think Trenton remembers. I know he knew about it. Now down below the chimney, if you can see a little round circle, in the middle of that picture, that was a cover that run from over the pond. Whatever that pond got up very high, the water would run out through that cover, come down through there and run down by the well, and some of the water would seep in the well, and the well would get muddy. And for a time, we would have to drink muddy water. You hear the old song about wash my hands in muddy water? Well, we didn't only wash our hands in muddy water, but we had to drink muddy water. But they say we lived and done right well. So down below, there's a little story on this. Now, I've taken this picture. I had Ronnie with me. That is Proctor Cave. Proctor Cave was open at that time. It was wasn't sealed up. We could go in there, and that was known also as a chalk cave. There's white big blocks of chalk. It was just like some sort of stone, but it was white and it was soft, and you could write on blackboards with it, just like regular chalk. It was chalk. I never heard anybody mention that, but it was a lot of chalk in that cave. I went in there, I bet 100 times myself, and that was getting on down close to Doyle Valley. It was actually in Proctor Valley. It was named after the cave, which is Proctor Cave, and the hotel up above our house was known as Proctor Hotel. At one time, it was a big tourist place. I mean, a lot of people come from all over there to see that. Now, I want to tell you about that. Down after we got down there, Ronnie taking a bad spell of asthma, and he just couldn't hardly get his breath. I have emphysema, and sometimes I almost fall flat on my face if I can't get my, Ruby calls them puff puffs, spray. And I guess I sound like I about need one right now. But Ronnie couldn't hardly walk. He was a pretty good sized young man. So I got him piggyback on my back, and I carried him all the way up that cotton picking hill and over to the road where Ella was waiting for us. But I got that boy out from back there, and yeah, we made it just fine. Now that road that we come back up, yeah, I don't think Trenton told you about this. That used to be a stagecoach line. Back in Jesse James' days, there was a stagecoach run through there, right by our place. And that was a stagecoach line. That road is still cut down there, I imagine. It's narrow and rough, like they were back in those days. And in front of our house, there, when we first went there, you could dig up ashes and coal, charcoals, and square nails. And the old folks told me that that was a trading post back in the western days. And right out between where that trading post was and our house was a short distance, because that trading post was built right in front of our house, was a place where Jesse James robbed a stagecoach. I believe it was in 1830. So that place had a lot of history, and it goes back a long ways. And that is something I'll never forget. And I used to go up there and dig up little old pieces of stuff out of those ashes. Of course, now I don't guess there's any such any stuff like that at all. I guess it's all completely gone. But I'm surprised some of the stuff still around. It was there when I was there, like that wheelbarrow wheel. I rolled a many load of wood on that thing, and also my timber and stuff I used to prepare the house. And I had to put new boards on the house and stuff. Everybody else was gone. Uncle Trenton and all of them. I was the only one left as any size, and I had to be the big boy, work on the place there. I guess that wheelbarrow, you would say it was my first pickup truck. Well, I've had several Chevrolet trucks, and I've had one international truck. And I'm going to say that you can say that wheel come off of my Ford pickup truck if you want to. So we'll let that go at that. I'll see if I got something else on the other side here. Yeah, we got a picture of your Aunt Ella, wait, let me get up here to it, and Uncle Perry, and Ronnie. And sitting down is your grandpa, Jim Wells.
Hey there, you Kentuckians, and also that fellow way out there in Western State. We're going to finish this tape we started before Ruby went to the hospital. As you know, she went to the hospital in July, stayed there 87 days. She fought a good fight. We lost her. We lost the fight. So this is the 10th day of February, 1992, and I'm just finishing tape up for you, Jeffrey and Trenton. When he was down, he looked at the tape, said he would like to also have a copy, so I'm also going to send Trenton a copy of this tape. And Trenton, of course, you know, all through most of the tape I'll be referring to Jeff, because the first part of the tape was cut. We got a little bit left on this tape. I want to finish it up tonight so I can kind of get in the mail to you, like I told you I would. And on the tape you've seen before, I had wrote the poem. I read the poem. I read the poem to you that Gordon had wrote years ago, and I want to do it again. I want to finish this tape off with it. If it's still running, I'll get through. We'll say a few more words on it at the end of it. And this poem goes like this. It's written about the days around Mammoth Cave, which ties in with this tape. And by the way, before I go any further, I want to make a correction. Now, Jesse James did not ride by Stagecoach around 18 and 30. It was later than that, because Jesse James come into effect around and right after during and after the Civil War. Okay. Around Mammoth Cave, I strolled as a boy. These days were filled with joy. We moved there back in 28. I was just a boy, but I remember the date. We moved next to Proctor Hotel. It is gone now, but I remember it well. I remember my old home place where it stood on the railroad tracks by the locust wood. Now the place is hard for me to find, and it has grown up with bushes and grapevine. And gone is a little school called Age that stood halfway between Park City and Mammoth Cave. To this school as a boy I went, and many happy days there I spent. My teacher, Mrs. Delphi Noreen, she taught the children to read and to be honest and clean. Now this is very hard for me to tell, that many times there rules I failed. Today it's hard to remember the children's names, but I remember Hanson's and our grapevine swing. There were the Doyles, the Francis, the Furlongs, I remember these, although it's been so long. On Sunday at the Hansons we played ball and marble games, and on our grapevines we would swing. I watched the dummy pass by many a day, and Mr. Pete Charlotte never failed to wave. He was the engineer, so jolly and gay. He ran this train from Glasgow Junction to Mammoth Cave. Now Glasgow Junction is Park City, I'm sorry to say. The name was changed one day. For this no one will I blame, and I'll not try to complain. Now this poem wasn't hard to start, as every word is coming from my heart. There were the cut lips, the herons I remember, and how we cut our winter wood in November. There was Christine, he was a real friend. I shall remember his kindness till the end. There are so many I cannot recall, although I loved them all. Yes, I remember the 4th of July at Mammoth Cave. In my childhood, that was a great day. All over the state, they come from far and near to be with their friends that were so dear. I'm bound to say from the depths of my heart that Mammoth Cave National Park is one great and beautiful place with hospitality regardless of race. This park is so much better than when I was a boy. There were trails camping around and so much more. If scenery and beauty, if you want to see, you can find it at Mammoth Cave, believe me. I have explained from the start that Mammoth Cave is the garden spot. Now you may visit the pyramids in Egypt, the redwood forest, and you may see China's wall, the bluegrass forests, the tower in France, and the Pope of Rome, all of Asia, Europe, and the Yellowstone. But your trip is not complete, I'm bound to say, until you visit the Mammoth Cave. Inside this cave, you'll see onyx and stalactites. There are underground rivers and stalagmites. You'll see icicles-like formations that's been there for thousands of generations. Now it's a pleasure to see the domes, the pits, the crystal lake. Don't miss this for your own sake. I'll just mention a few beautiful rocks you'll find that's been coming since the beginning of time. Been forming since the beginning of time. That's in a wrinkle there, I missed part of that. There's frozen Niagara and the Dead Sea. Need I mention this snowball dining room, the onyx colonnade you'll see. My advice to you as you travel along is to see Mammoth Cave before you go home. Okay, now that's Miss Gordon's poem. And Harry, if you see this tape, again, before you send it on to Jeffrey, you're talking about getting some history of that place. You might want to pay a little attention to the names that were mentioned in this letter. That was a pretty good coverage of the people that lived in that neighborhood, because there's a lot more besides them, but that's a whole lot of them. It didn't mention the marriages, and it didn't mention the ages and several in that area, but it's pretty good. I also have a letter here that Gordon wrote myself and Ruby and the girls, and it says people have changed and so on. And so, okay, now let me see what this one says. It says people have changed in the last days, going to and from on the broadways. In a run, day in and day out, hearts failing in fear and doubt. Even dropping God who created them, saying all is well and then no end. Hell is being wide open for them that say, come, let's go on to Broadway. Love is turning to hate, it seems. Minds wandering from heaven's beam. We've went from hard days to atomic bombs, showing but little mercy for poor and dumb. And it goes on, the poem does. I won't read no more of that. That's just some of his poems. He had talent here as far as this is concerned, and it's a shame that he didn't heed some of his own words. It is. I'm not a hypocrite. I'm going to say he did. From what I hear, he did not. That's bad. But nothing we can do about that. Just mind our own and try to do better ourselves. And while this is still running, Trenton, Rumsey, Harry, appreciate y'all so much. Coming down. I had my mind made up I was going to be kind of cute and not do that. But I'm just a Wickman, I guess. I got these girls backing me here. My babies right here. I love so much. All of them. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Good to see
We
you.
love the
Sorry it was
flowers.
under those circumstances. Margaret said something.
We love the flowers that Jeff.
Yeah, the flowers that Jeff sent was lovely. And we're keeping our head above water down here. We're taking one day at a time.
We're getting better.
It's getting easier as we go along, but it's threatening. And a lot of people know that it does take time. They say time heals all wounds. I'll be glad when mine stops bleeding so it can start healing. I don't think wounds heal as long as they're bleeding, and I'm still bleeding a little bit. But I'll make it. I'll make it. You bet I will.
Yes.
I've got to. I got one girl here, one in yonder. I'll make it.
You've been bouncing back.
Yeah, I'll bounce back a rubber ball. Yeah, in a week or two, in once or two, year or two or something or other, I'll be able to go bear hunting with a switch. Or I could whip a bear with a wet noodle, I guess. I don't know. Like I said. But it was so nice, y'all doing what you did when you here. Really would have loved that. First part of this tape, she was with us. This part she is not in the house. Here with us, but here she
She
is.
was at home.
Glad you people made the trip okay and got back okay. And I don't know how much more people got on. Now's when I need the tractor. They won't do it. But we're going to get this up there to you, fellas. And
That was a good place that I looked for.
which other form on? Margaret talking now. Huh?
I believe you know the one I was talking
The other poem?
about. Yeah.
I don't believe I could read that, honey. I really don't. We got a beautiful poem from a friend that I can't read it. Every time I start to read it, it gets in. You can't talk, and I don't want to. I done messed something up here, I guess, on this one. I don't need to do anymore.
You want to do it?
I don't need to do anymore.
You got the berry?
Listeners of sinus pain.
Release me and let me live again.
So I saw this detergent with bleach alternative, and I wondered how it compared to my Clorox 2 on colored loads. So I pulled out the twins' dirty shirts.
God, it's true.